that I had a vocation and I wanted to live the purpose-driven life. And I took that philosophy and embodied it in all I did. You heard some of the areas that I worked in over the years. And I taught middle school and elementary school in the public school system. One of the turning points for me was developing the Right to Read program at Malcolm King College, because I was still that very shy person who didn't want to speak. But I had an opportunity to develop a program from scratch, to select the teachers, the curriculum. And I could do all of that because, as I said, I'm one of those background workers. But at the end of the program, when it came time to giving a talk, I was so frightened. I got up in front of the audience and I had some index cards. You know, they tell you to have index cards, and I couldn't frame the words to give my speech. I just stood there. And it taught me that I had to work on my own communication skills. I eventually did give that talk, but I was very nervous. And so as I went along and was put in that position again, I made sure that I would practice my speech, and I would stand in front of the mirror and practice and start to try and get used to talking to people, to moving outside of myself. That was a practice skill. One of the courses I teach at Medgar Evers College is called the Spoken Word and African American Discourse. And we study the history of the spoken word in our community. And one of the areas that we focus on is getting young people to stand up in front of an audience, to think about how they reach that audience, to make eye contact, to put music in the background if they have to, and to practice, because nothing comes easy. Those people you see getting up on stage, they're very often nervous too. I just finished grading papers, and my students said that was one of the things they really learned about the value and importance of practicing, and to have in their repertoire speeches and ways of talking that would influence and impact people. Another turning point was when I had an opportunity to manage a bookstore, the Nkuru Center for Education and Culture. I don't think you mentioned that, Blaine. My son, Talib, and his friend, Yasembe, who was then Mos Def, decided to buy a bookstore, which was the oldest independent Black bookstore in Brooklyn. And then they went on tour with Mos Def and Blacks and
Black Star.
Yeah, the Black Star. They went on tour. So I was working at Medgar Evers College. I have to give my praise and thank you to the former president, Edison O. Jackson. I told him that I wanted to do a number of things, which included managing the store, getting it online, turning it into an educational and cultural center, and also writing proposals to start a Center for Black Literature. So I did that. And that really helped me appreciate what independent businesses go through, and the importance it is of supporting our independent booksellers, our independent businesses. If you have a choice, you go to Black-owned businesses. Blacks support each other, do not support each other enough in their communities, and other ethnic groups do. I had to order books, we had to vendor, we tried to form a coalition with other booksellers. It was very, very challenging. But as I said, I appreciated what people who are out there every day, who are not necessarily bringing in a paycheck, what they face and what they have to do in order to sustain their business. And for them, it's not about having a job. It goes back to living the purpose-driven life and deciding what it is you want your goal to be in life. There's a saying in the scriptures that many are called and few are chosen. And I recognize and embrace that calling. I realize now that I have been chosen when I look at the work I did within Nkuru, with my leadership positions at Medgar Evers College. I was a member of the Adelaide Sanford Institute, an educational organization, also the Institute of the Black World for the 20th Century, the National Conference of Artists, the National Council for Teachers of English. I understood that although I was a professor in an academic institution, it was important that I connect with organizations outside of my community. And I connect and find a place to have an impact in those organizations, because that is part of what we do in this life. We have to think about what our legacy will be. We have to think about what our calling is. And there's a poet and visual artist, Dr. Margaret Burroughs, who has a poem called "What Will Your Legacy Be?" And I always share that. I like to share that in talks, and I share that in my class, because I think it's important that you live that purpose-driven life. Working at a college like Medgar Evers College, I am continually reminded of the importance of legacy. We added a college that was formed because a Black man was murdered advocating for the right to vote. And so I'm just going to read a couple of lines from Dr. Margaret Burroughs' poem. By the way, she's no longer with us. She died, but she's the co-founder of the DuSable Museum in Chicago. It's an African-American museum. And she was a visual artist as well as a poet. And she says, "What will your legacy be?" Legacy? Legacy? Do you know what the word legacy means? Well, if you don't know, let me tell you what the dictionary says it means. Legacy: property or money left to someone by a will, something handed down from those who have gone before, a legacy of honor, our legacy of freedom. In this poem, I'm not referring to material things like property or money instead of honor or freedom. I'm referring to what a person has done with this life that God has given to him or her. Yes, I want to know, what will your legacy be? This is a question I would like to put out to each and every one of you. So I say to you, remember the people on whose shoulders you stand. The writers, activists, and luminary leaders are very often those in the front of a movement. They are those who take the lead in resisting and being activists. They lead the movement. People like Francis Harper Watkins, Frederick Douglass, Ida B. Wells, W.E.B. Du Bois, Richard Wright, Langston Hughes, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Gwendolyn Brooks, Tony K. Bambara, Audre Lorde, and Octavia Butler have laid the foundation for living the purpose-driven life. And remember the children. Our children come through us. We have to put them first. No matter what you do, never give up on your sons or daughters. That is a lesson that we have to embrace. As I was raising my sons, I remember parents becoming frustrated. This may have happened to you. I did everything I can. It's up to them now, and I'm not going to do any more. Never give up on your family. Never give up on your children. Find a way, continue talking. Make sure you are there no matter what. That's part of our responsibility. Marian Wright Edelman wrote a book called "The Sea is So Wide and My Boat is So Small." She's a leading advocate for children's rights. The sea is so wide and my boat is so small. And she asks us to ask difficult questions about what we truly value and to look hard at what we can do to build a nation that's fit for our children. What do we want this world to look like for our children in this midst of this pandemic of the coronavirus and the pandemic of racism that surrounds us? Talib and Jamal are who they are because we, their father and I, encourage them to find their passion in life. So once you find your passion in life, you have to set up a plan. There's another saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. You have to set up a plan and you have to have a work ethic. You have to get up every day. You have to be disciplined. And I'll end with this, which I think gives us hope. Octavia Butler is a speculative fiction writer. She wrote a book called Parable of the Sower and another book called Parable of the Talents. And I attended a webinar a couple of weeks ago that said Octavia tried to tell us. The protagonist of the book lives in a post-pandemic world. She lives in a world where people have gated communities. There's disease all around. There's violence all around. And Lauren has a special gift. She can feel what other people feel, but she has invented something she calls Earthseed, which is a belief. The Earthseed belief is the belief that everything you touch is change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. We're at a change, so you have to think about what you can do from your space, wherever you are, to embrace the change, embrace the pause, and realize that there is still much you can do if you decide what your purpose in life is and what your calling is. Light a path for your journey in life. Embrace the change we're now in, and remember, you are the ones we've been waiting for. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Greene.
You're welcome.
So the first thing I have to point out, and is one of the first things I always point out, and my interns that are on the call, they're probably going to remember, it always seems to be a reoccurring theme that shows up, and this is not scripted. You and I didn't discuss exactly what you were going to speak about, but one of the things that you spoke about just now, right at the end, was having a plan, right? Yes. And so you coupled that with, you know, the idea of how you raised your sons to follow passions, and then you figure out the plan. So I believe it was maybe earlier last week around Tuesday, we had a gentleman on, Mr. Ty Richardson, and the one thing he discussed that I think many people took away was having a plan. And that was because he had an easy time in college, right? He had an easy time in high school. And then when he got to college, he didn't have such an easy time. And so it was a challenge, and he wound up dropping out. And once he had some self-reflection, he was able to realize that, you know, he was living others' dreams, and which was his parents. And the idea was just go to school and come home with a degree. There really wasn't any strategy to it, right? And so one of the things that I like about the bandwidth I have with the program with my interns now is that whereas I did go to college, I did do a master's degree as well, I also can be able to speak to younger folks and say, I know that college, 4-year, 2-year, 8 years, whatever, that may not be the path that's the correct one for you, right? And only you will be able to know that. So I feel good that I'm able to promote to them other types of options, right? Because college can turn into a really expensive vacation if you don't just take care of it the right way, right? And usually that's a ticket that you're paying for a very long time, and it accrues interest, and it becomes very expensive. So we like the idea of providing options and letting them know that we're here to encourage what you want to do and help you get to that point, as opposed to telling you this is what we do here and you just have to follow this path. That's not fair. So path. You also mentioned Black businesses. You talked about Black businesses as well, and how, you know, it's a struggle. It's difficult to get them to work together, and different ethnicities don't have that same type of complication for the most part. So I speak to the group a lot about also, you know, giving back and being able to pull someone up with you. And once you get the game, you have to give it to someone else, because, you know, no one's going to be there just being ready to give it up to us. We always have to fight. Makes a lot of sense. So what we like to do now is we pretty much open up for questions. And I think we may have one. So first we have one of my interns. He said that was very inspirational. That was the first thing he said. And he has hand clapped emojis. Right. And so and then we have Miss Anna Baker. And she mentioned that she arrived late, but she's wondering when and how you figured out what your passion was.
Okay, so I want to start with one of the things my father used to say about passion. He used to say, find your hobby in life. What is it you love to do? And I love to read. You know, I used to like to play school. So make your hobby your life's work. Find your hobby. We all need a hobby. So that's the key to finding your passion. And I just want to also just say something about what you said about Black businesses. My sons are the opposite in terms of what they did. Jamal went through all of the Ivy League colleges, ended up teaching, being a professor at Columbia University. Talib went to boarding school because he was about to drop out of high school. And then he went to college for one semester, called a family meeting and said, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do my music. And he went and got himself a job because he had been raised in a household where he knew that he had to work. He went and got a job. He got an apartment. He called a family meeting and said, I'm going to do my music. And he did it. And he talks about the sacrifices that he made and how sometimes, he didn't know, he didn't have a lot of money, but he walked the streets handing out flyers. He made sure he met different individuals. He told me when he was very young, I never want to work for anybody. So he was determined that he was going to start his own business. He has his own label and he has to meet a payroll all the time. But I've watched him. And in fact, years ago, I went on a tour with him for a couple of days and I was overwhelmed because, he's like, it's constant. He's up very early in the morning. Any of you know he's on Twitter all the time, but he's working all the time. My other son has 3 children, and you know how hard it is. So he's interacting with them during the day and working during the day. And then at night, for 3-4 hours, he is doing his own work. It goes back to, if you have a passion, you're going to do that no matter what. And the other thing I wanted to say about Black businesses is that we don't realize how we have to really, I like what you said about giving back and coordinating and coming together. That was the biggest challenge. And if we could learn to do that, we would be so much stronger. So I hope that answered your question about how you find your passion. And I found my passion because I started doing what I love doing and just started building on that.
I definitely have to say that is a challenge, and I can attest to that, myself, because, and I think what happens is that you kind of get caught up in a spot where your passion, you're not really sure how to attack it to make it monetize, i.e. income, you know what I mean? But, you have a job, which is you understand how that operates. You go there, you be miserable, you get paid, you go home, right? You know what I mean? But a passion, you can't think that that's going to be an easy way out, because like you said, probably what your son Talib did was probably much harder than going to any school, right? Because if he can do all of this, chances are he's a pretty bright individual. So school itself probably wasn't the challenge. It probably was not being interested in school that was the challenge at the time. And therefore, he always knew that he felt like he was taking time away from his passion by doing these other things. And that's why they didn't connect. And I think it's very empowering that you mentioned he was able to call a family meeting, right? Because, like it doesn't have to matter what the world thinks, but if your support system continues to support you and they have your back, then you feel a different type of way about what you're doing. You don't feel like, you're just blowing into the wind or something like that. So I think that's very powerful that he's able to call a family meeting with his mom, his dad, and his brother to say, look, this is what I want to do. and everyone got on board, right? And then he had to go get a job. So he still was planning. He was planning, even though he was breaking the original plan. So hand claps to
It was
him.
not his plan. It was our plan. And you can imagine how hard that was, having parents who are both professors, how hard it was to accept that. But again, it goes back to that support system. If you nurture in your children and that they should find their passion, you're going to have to accept the consequences of that. And you have to be there and support them. As I said, you can't give up on them. You have to let them know you're there.
So, and I'm going to stay in line with the talk about passion, right? And I wrote this down earlier this morning, and we have Dr. Granum. We had Dr. Granum on Tuesday, and he's actually on the call right now because I saw him join, right? But he did a PowerPoint slide for us, and on the PowerPoint, he had a part where he showed about articles from about 8 different publications. And they were about like following your passion and versus not following your passion, but they were all like reputable publications, and each one of them contradicted the other, right? So the thing was, the one headline would say, "This is why you should follow your passion," and then the next headline would tell you why following your passion is not the way to go, right? So he had about 8 different articles that showed you that. So when I saw what you mentioned about your sons at the end, I had to, ask, right? So I guess you can kind of be the jury right now on this question, but which one is right? Right? So I have to believe you believe your pet, but why do you believe that's the key to success?
Again, I wanted to say that Talib tried it our way. He tried to go to college. But you have to look at what's in your soul and what your calling is. And if you take the time to think about that, sometimes it means writing on that, and you go with what's in your soul, you will be fine. Your path may be more challenging because you're not going the traditional route, but you'll be satisfied with yourself. And ultimately, that's what we have to do in life. We have to find out what's going to feed our spirit and our soul and be satisfied with that. And, it's very, very interesting. Both my sons make a lot more money than I do. And they're, one went to college and one didn't. But it's because they're pursuing their passion. And how do you, I want to add that you have to also surround yourself with people, like-minded people who are going to help inspire that passion. If you like art, if you like music, if you're in business, you have to do the networking. You talked about that earlier. You have to connect with other people who are like-minded. You have to surround yourself with people who are going to reinforce what you're doing. You have to actively seek. Now we have the internet. We're using that a lot more. Attend webinars, do the writing, attend programs, do the research. You have to do all of that. You have to make a conscious decision, and that's in the planning for how you're going to pursue your passion. Because if you sit back and wait for it to happen, it's not going to happen. I think that's what God does for us. He gives us that light, but we have the wisdom to do the activities and take those strategies that are going to help us have that light shine for us. So it doesn't happen by itself. It's deliberate. You have to have deliberate intentions or interventions.
Understood. So I have one of my interns. He said that he reads sometimes, but he has been looking for more interesting books to read. What books would you recommend reading?
Oh my goodness. There are so many books. Well, I think first of all, you start with what you like to read. If you're looking for books around inspiration, one of the books I keep next to me is The Purpose-Driven Life, Living the Purpose-Driven Life. And I'm blocking on the title of the book. There's another book called Planting the Seeds of Success, which looking at every obstacle you have is an opportunity to ride the waves of success. And again, I don't know the names, but if you Google Planting the Seeds of Success, and The Road Less Traveled is another book, The Road Less Traveled, The Purpose-Driven Life. I know that I'm not quoting books by Black people around inspiration, and there are many. I just finished reading Why They Call Us a Terrorist, which really zeroes in on how why the founders of Black Lives Matter started that. That's with Patrisse Cullors and Asha Bandeli. That also was very inspirational. I think you have to look at books that relate to your own personal interests and use that as a starting point for figuring out what else you want to read.
I think that makes a lot of sense because as a person and myself, I know I remember being a little younger, maybe like I was 12 or so, and my uncle giving me the biography of Malcolm X.
Oh, right.
And you know, it was about like 500 pages. And so as a young person, that was just like super challenging for me. And I don't think that at that time I didn't get through it. I believe I eventually got through it. However, it wasn't until I started to appreciate more who Malcolm X was that I was able to get through it and want to get through it. Because at 12, it was just a little difficult, but I do understand what you mean when you say that you should start with something that interests you, because that's what'll get the brain power flowing and make you want to learn more and make you want to look further and see other opinions of other authors and find out, you know, who's your favorite, so to speak.
Right. I want to just add, and I don't know why I neglected this, and I also do book reviews for them, and my interns often work there. The African American Literary Book Club is the AALBC.com. It's the largest African American book club. It's online. The founder is Troy Johnson, who I think he worked for JP Morgan, and then he ended up leaving because he loved books so much, and he started this wonderful website. It has most of the books, upcoming new books, all the books by Black writers, all different genres, and that's a really good place to start. He has resources for writers. He has book reviews. My interns work there. My interns, they go and they write book reviews for it. So again, African American Literary Book Club. And then the other book I wanted to see, Hakeem Abudi, who's a poet from the Black Arts Movement, talks about the book that changed his life, and that was Black Boy by Richard Wright. Again, when I was growing up, we didn't have books around us by Black people. You have that now. You know, I don't think I read a book by a Black person until I was in college. And so the website is good, but looking at the writers, the Black writers, you have libraries around you. You can go to those sections. I know the Macon Library has a good section. Sonia Sanchez talks about the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, which has all of these books. So again, I encourage you to go to those sites, and that's a beginning, and you have a wide range to select from.
Thank you for that. And I had like several questions here, but you've like answered them probably twice at some point, right? And so, but nevertheless, I have a little bit more. So the one thing I noticed in reading your bio was obviously you do a lot of editing and providing platforms, and you're a powerhouse in the literary field, right? So, and correct me if I'm wrong if I missed this, but I didn't see author in there.
You didn't see author?
No.
An author?
Author.
AUTH?
Correct.
Okay, so if you read the books that I've edited, which in most of the books I've edited, I have essays in those books. I don't have my total book, like the African Presence on Literature in the Americas. I've written a lot of essays. I
Okay.
just submitted an essay that deals with the coronavirus that's going to be in Conch magazine. I've written numerous essays. I've written book reviews. So you can say more of my writing is either academic or more essays that are part of the public domain. And I've edited several books on American literature, writers on writing. So those are the books. And I said, I didn't realize I had sent you so much information. Yeah, so it's not that I have a couple of books that I'm waiting for, but running the Center for Black Literature, being a professor of English with all of my work, I have not had the time to sit down and write. Not finished. I have another book that I want to do with writers. But so mine has been supporting other writers and writing about what they're doing. I just did an essay on celebrating the fact that we now have 5 Black writers who won the Pulitzer Prize this year.
Oh, wow.
5.
Congratulations.
So it's on our website. So I just did an essay on that. So those are the kinds of things that I've been doing in my way to support. As I said, you have to look at where you are and what you can do. And that's what I can do right now.
Oh, great. It's just when I saw everything else, I said, and I skimmed through it at least 3 or 4 times just to make sure I wasn't missing anything. I said, but I didn't see that. So I said I was going to ask. So glad to know.
Yeah, those books you read, those are mine. Yeah.
Gotcha. So we have a question from one of our interns, Miss Kimmy. And she asks, what is one of the biggest challenges of running a Black and small owned business? So let's say a small Black owned business.
Oh, okay. The biggest challenge is, I think, the time. You with a small Black owned business, you have to have a backup, because generally you cannot pay yourself from the money generated from that business. You're going to have some type of backup, whether it's your savings or another job that you do. Many people end up using family members, but those businesses that are successful are businesses where the person is not necessarily paying themselves. You have to really, really want that. And that's the motivating factor. And eventually you can probably make money. But in the beginning, you have to be willing to make that sacrifice.
That's a really good question from Kimmy, and then that's a very interesting response, because I think that sometimes with social media and what we see on TV and things like that, right? So you hear a lot of people, especially in our the younger brackets of teenagers and things like that, they're exposed to a lot of gloating and things like that make it seem like, oh, I'm the boss. I call all the shots and this is what I do. And I get a lot of money doing it. When in actuality, it's probably more like what you described, right? So when you run your own business, yeah, all of the money that comes in probably goes to you. But guess what? You ain't going to be able to keep running the business if you don't put the money back into the business. And then hopefully eventually you begin to turn a profit. But I think a lot of it goes to, like you explained, you have to have a second source of income, where you have to have a real source of income for a while, because what happens is if you don't, you won't be able to support the business that you're looking to be able to have support you at some point in time. And then that's when they kind of fail. And right. So, and that makes it difficult. So again, that goes back to sometimes we see the goal at the end of the tunnel, but we don't see that path that has to be traveled in between. So I think that's really important to point out that, a small Black owned business, yes, it's yours. And that's absolutely something to be proud of, but don't forget the grind that has to go with it, because if you don't put that work in, it's going to be useless at the end of the day.
Right. But if you're passionate about it, it'll be worth it. I invite you to go to the website, Akila Worksongs, AKILA, worksongs.com. April Silver works with us. She formed her own business over 20 years ago. She's talked to me about what that struggle has been like. You know, as it said, it's a struggle. It's a beautiful struggle, but she was committed to making sure that she told the story of the work that Black people were doing in the arts, and she's been committed to that, and she's had ups and downs, but that's driving her. And she talked to me about what keeps her connected and keeps her going is realizing the success that she has with people who are benefiting from that. And again, you have to be thinking all the time. You have to be creative. You have to think outside of the box. You know, you cannot just, if you're having your own business, you have to realize that, again, use every obstacle as an opportunity to ride the waves of success. Talib reminds me that all the time. And Hakeem Abudi, you have to meet the payroll. One restaurateur in my neighborhood, he only kept it open because he said the people in the neighborhood liked it, and he wanted to make sure his employees had jobs, but he wasn't making any money. So there goes that passion, and so it goes back to what are your values in life? What's really more important to you?
Very true. And personally, I believe that when you do things like that, the universe has a way of making that stuff come back around in a positive karmic kind of way. So hats off to that gentleman for keeping that restaurant open with the thought of his employees in the neighborhood. Do we have any more questions? Anyone? Well, I have one more.
Okay.
So I have one more. So my question is, and I think this might be an easy one, not sure, but I just want to know, so why do you think that's like maybe society doesn't read more?
I think people are reading more. They're just reading differently. I think people are still reading. They're not reading extensively. They're not reading deeply. They're bombarded with information, as you know, from the social media, their broadcasts. And so the reading is in snippets. You know, you look at what's on Facebook, social media. You look at the blogs, and people are just surrounded with so much information that it makes it much more challenging to do sustained reading. So it's a different kind of reading. I would like to see people read more deeply. I think we need, more book clubs. We need more conversations about what's really happening, because I think reading can bring you a comfort and a peace, and it can answer a lot of questions. Most writers, one of the things I ask on the radio show I do is, why did you write the book? And very often the answer is, I wrote the book because I wanted to find an answer to a question. So our writers are looking at the questions we have in our society, and they're writing stories, they're creating poems, they're writing plays, they're generating films that will answer those questions. So if we look very critically at what they're doing, we're going to find a lot of those answers. And we can find that we'll be motivated by it. And it's also, refreshing to be able to think about something from a different perspective.
Very well. So because I have to say, I definitely am guilty of becoming part of the people who look at the short excerpts. Yes. Because sometimes I look at something and I might scroll through it first, and if I gotta flick my finger too many times, I say, you know what, I gotta get back to this later. So I try to break those habits. My uncle, he's an avid reader, so I had one of my younger cousins come to me and say he was trying to read more, and I said, well, damn, if my younger cousin is going to tell me he's trying to read more and they look up to me, I got to do a little bit better. And so he said, even if it's like 2-3 pages a night, that's a start. I said, all right, cool. So I asked one of my uncles to provide me with the book, and still guilty. It still didn't work. So I got to try again. I'm going to try again. I'm going to do better. I promise.
And turn off the TV.
Yes. I'm going to do better.
From the papers.
I'm going to do better. So we did have one follow-up question, I guess, in the comment section. And it said, what do you think is the most effective way to focus on what you read and retain the information?
Right. I have a saying, the writer's always reading, the reader's always writing. Every book I read, first of all, I try to be interactive with the book. And some people don't believe in writing in the books. I have marks and sometimes, check marks. I put little words and phrases if something strikes me that I'm reading, so I can come back to it. And after I read everything I read, I go to my journal and I write my response to it. Just do free writing, like what were my thoughts, what struck me. It helps me to think about what I'm doing. So the reading is not just a mindless activity. The reading is an active activity. So I know that I'm going to go back after I finish that book and write down what I was really thinking. What was the message? How does this relate to my life? What can I take away from it? And so I say the writer's always reading, reader's always writing. People who are good writers are reading, and they're actively reading. They're interacting with a book. One of my colleagues in a conference said that he used to collect the books that his students are reading. If they were a literary text, he would collect the books because he wanted to see how they were interacting with the text. Reading is not a passive activity. It's an active activity. So that's how you can retain what you are reading.
Dr. Greene, I absolutely never thought of it that way. So maybe that does help.
Oh,
Right? Because I'm the one thing I would always fall victim to. I would say, okay, I'm going to read, and I sit down and start reading, and my eyelids start getting really heavy, really quickly. But I do believe maybe if I'm being interactive, that would kind of change it up a little bit, because I think with the idea that once you kind of start feeling like, okay, I'm getting tired of reading, then you're not comprehending anymore. And so then you're just like going through the words to go through the words. And then you feel like, okay, now this is pointless. So with that, I'm going to make sure I do interactive reading. And I encourage all my interns to do interactive reading as well.
Yeah. Can I invite you to join our book club?
Yes.
We just started it. It's an online book club, and we meet the last Wednesday of each month. So the next time we'll be meeting is the last Wednesday in June, and it'll be on our website, centerforblackLiterature.org. We're reading Jasmine Ward's The Fire This Time for our next book. She was motivated to write it after reading James Baldwin's The Fire Next Time. The Fire This Time is a series of essays and stories from different people about what we're going through. So that should be an interesting discussion. And I also encourage you to tune in. It's a webinar that's being promoted by the Center for Black Literature, Medgar Evers College, and Senator Zellner Myrie next Wednesday evening. It's going to be with the Pulitzer Prize winning author, Nicole Hannah Jones, who just won a Pulitzer for her 1619 project. And you're probably aware that project really covers and provides examples of the disparities in our story, the story of Black people in America. There have been a lot of projects that emanated for that, but it was her attempt to make sure that we gave a different narrative to the history of Blacks in America. So she will be in conversation with the senator. I'll be moderating that conversation, and that's next Wednesday. Again, it'll be on our website, and maybe if you join our mailing list, you can send it. You'll get a mailing. You'll get an email blast about it. So, and I also encourage you to visit the Center for Black Literature. There are a lot of things we're doing. We're trying to make sure we have a presence. Next month, we have a conversation on Black masculinity with Ty Allen. He has a book on poetry, a combination of memoir and poetry. We're just trying to do a lot of things to keep people connected and to keep people hopeful and to give people opportunities to look at what they can do to effect change. And remember, persist and resist, embrace the change.
Embrace the change. So with that theme that seems to be very good for parting on the end of the call, right? I'm going to put a spotlight on a young lady we have in the group, right? And she may text me and tell me that she's upset that I did it, but I'm okay with that But we have a young lady named Ashanti in our group, right? And when I reached out to you to request you as one of our guests, a lot of it was with her in mind because she also is someone who she really likes to write. In fact, she had one of her works published at like age 13 in one of the local publications, and she sent it to me, and I'll share it with you via email.
Okay.
I actually would have preferred if she would have did the introduction for you, but she is that shy girl who kind of just likes the things she likes and feels like she's a background worker kind of situation. And so I really hope that I know she's listening. So I really hope that she was able to gain a lot from speaking with you during this time, because I know I did. And clearly, you see one of our participants let us know that it was very inspirational to him. So hopefully, maybe you can just give her you can give some final words to her about her shyness and her wanting to work in the background, but having so much talent and so much to offer that she's not unleashing, right, and not opening up that communication.
Okay, so I encourage you to keep writing and to find a mentor, to connect yourself to other people who are writing, but keep writing and send your stories and your poems out. You can connect with a writing group. If you write me at the Center for Black Literature, I can offer you some suggestions. But you just keep writing. Do not let anyone deter you, and share your writing with other people who are close to you. And eventually you'll find you can attend a workshop. We have writers' workshops coming up. That's another way to build your confidence. We have a workshop that's coming up for our writers' conference. But think about joining a writers' workshop or support. That's really important, so you don't feel like you're by yourself, and you want to have a real audience. And you'll feel a little bit shy in the beginning, but that's okay. You'll come out of it.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes. Oh, I think that's her.
Yeah. Thank you for that advice. I really appreciate that. And that's really cool and all. However, it ain't about confidence. It's more like I already know how I am and what I want to do with my stuff. I'm 100% fine with being a background worker, as Blaine has liked to put it. And it's more like I want to be able to focus on my writing while also doing a job that doesn't involve it at all. Even though I would like to maybe have a job in writing, which would be cool too. However, I just don't, because the type of writing that I want to do doesn't involve anything that is expected of me when in a writing job.
Well, I understand that. So my first thought is to really join a writing group, a support group, so that you're doing this all the time. Many of the people who are writing, they have other jobs. They're waitressing, or they may be working in a publishing house, or they're doing sales. They're not really doing their life's work, because as a writer, you're not going to necessarily make a lot of money. You're doing it obviously because you're passionate about it. So you have to surround yourself with a support group and people who are going to help to keep you motivated and to give you feedback. That would be my suggestion, is to connect with a group.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that suggestion. And if a good one does pop up, I will be sure to try it. I've
Okay.
tried out before, haven't really gotten into anything, any support group or anything, barely counseling, but yeah, sure.
Okay, well, I'm going to connect you if you email me. One of the faculty members at our college is connected to a lot of groups, Donna Hill. She's written a lot of fiction and nonfiction. In fact, you can visit her website. But if you email me, I'll connect you to her. I'm sure she has some really good ideas. And she also teaches a fiction workshop She's not a poet, but she's very much immersed in the writing world and immersed with people who are supporting themselves in other ways while they're fulfilling their passion. You know, she has a she ended up getting her master's degree, went to school for a master's degree, a non-traditional master's degree. She didn't even get an undergraduate degree, but she was just so passionate about her writing that she was writing and writing and writing. And so when she went to get her degree, she was able to show a portfolio of her writing. And they gave her the undergraduate and the master's degree at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah. It's she's passionate no matter what she's doing her writing, but she's also realizes she has to work.
And can you share her website?
Donna Hill, donnahill.com.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you Google Donna Hill, she's a novelist.
Got it. So, Dr. Greene, this has been great. This has been inspirational. It's been, I said inspirational. It's been helpful. So I'm pretty sure the interns were able to take a lot away from this. Again, you hit a lot of our reoccurring themes, right? Especially at the end when you talked about having a plan. We just feel like, once we keep hammering these things in, they're going to hit home. And so when this program is through, we want them to know that they had a very exceptional experience that no other program in the city is getting by getting this type of energy from the people that we're able to be having exposure with. So we thank you again. And, hopefully, not hopefully, I have to join the book club. And, I'm going to do some follow up and we'll reach out to you. But again, thank you. We appreciate you and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for the work you're doing. Keep doing it. So you are making a difference. And I applaud and commend you for that. And thank you to the interns and the other guests for your feedback and for the questions. Really appreciate that. Be well, stay safe.
And embrace the change.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Greene. You have a good one.
Thank you.
All right.
Simply call 800-587-4614 to order now or request a free info pack and find out why not.
All right. Got it. 1 second, guys. Interns, hold up for me. Okay, I think it's just us.
Yeah.
All right. So hold on. Let me stop the recording. Sorry about that.